the release of Spider-Man Brand New Day, I thought now would be the perfect time to look back over the last 25 years or so and give you my ranking of all 10 feature-length Spider-Man movies. Spider-Man Brand New Day is just around the corner, so I thought now would be the perfect opportunity to do this. As there's been 10 feature-length Spider-Man films, I thought now would be a really great opportunity to give my ranking of all 10 of the movies, from the worst to the best. Let's just get straight into this, and coming in at the bottom of the pile, at number 10 I have The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that came out back in 2014, and yeah, I think this is the worst of all the Spider-Man feature-length films we've had so far. It was a big step down from its predecessor. The Amazing Spider-Man from 2012 I don't think was the greatest film, but I did enjoy that film. However, the sequel was a big step down. The biggest problem with this film is that there was just too many things going on. Instead of trying to focus on telling a really great kind of standalone film in its own right, they were just trying to shoehorn too many different things in there with setting up the Sinister Six, and you could tell Sony were really trying to catch up with the MCU and trying to compete with Marvel and trying to set up their own big wider cinematic universe, and they were spending too much time thinking about those kind of things and not spending enough time thinking about making a really good standalone film in its own right. And there's things about the movie that I like. You know, obviously Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are great as Peter Parker and as Gwen Stacy. That relationship and their chemistry that they have together is really good. I like that aspect of the film, but everything else didn't really work. Coming in at number 9 is Spider-Man 3, the closer to the original Raimi trilogy, and I do kind of like Spider-Man 3. I have a soft spot for it. I remember watching it back when it came out in 2007, and there's stuff in this movie that I really like and think is really good. Like all the stuff with Sandman I really enjoy. Thomas Hayden Church is really good in that role. Obviously Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But again, like with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you can tell they were trying to just shoehorn too many different elements in there. They had Venom, which probably wasn't necessary. I know the studio did really want Raimi to kind of put Venom in this movie, and he didn't really want to, and you kind of feel that watching this. They probably didn't need the Venom character in this movie. There was kind of again, like with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the issue of too many villains all crammed into this one movie. It probably should have just focused mainly on Sandman. That was the most emotionally resonant aspect of the movie as far as the villains are concerned. Probably didn't need a lot of the other elements. But yeah, there's some good stuff in this movie, especially kind of the birth of the Sandman sequence. That bit is a really kind of emotionally compelling scene. But again, on a whole, the movie doesn't quite work as well as it should have done. Coming in at number 8, I have the second film in the Tom Holland Homecoming trilogy, and it is Far From Home. And I do pretty much really enjoy everything from here on up now, but I think Far From Home was the weakest film in the Homecoming trilogy. I don't think it was bad, but I think it was a step down from Homecoming, and I didn't enjoy it as much as No Way Home either. I like Jake Gyllenhaal in the role of Mysterio. I remember when it was first announced that we were finally going to get to see Mysterio in live action. I was so hyped about that, and I think he was really great in that role. But I feel like a big problem with a lot of these Tom Holland movies, prior to Brand New Day anyway, I hope this isn't the issue with Brand New Day. It doesn't look like this is going to be the case. But with the Homecoming trilogy, it almost felt like they weren't super 100% confident about Spider-Man on his own, leading his own movie without any MCU elements there. So obviously Homecoming, we had Tony Stark. No Way Home, we have Doctor Strange. And then Far From Home, we have Nick Fury. With the Homecoming trilogy, I really like all 3 of those Tom Holland films. But my main issue with those 3 films is that they didn't really make full-blown Spider-Man movies in their own right that were kind of just about Peter Parker and his story, and stripping away all the other kind of MCU kind of wider universe elements. A lot of the time I feel weren't absolutely necessary to the movie, and they were just there just for the sake of it, just to kind of connect it to the wider MCU. And I like Far From Home, but I think it is the weakest of the trilogy, and so it comes in at number 8 for me. Coming in at number 7, I have the first Andrew Garfield film in The Amazing Spider-Man. I actually really enjoyed this movie. I don't think it was the greatest film, but I have fond memories of watching it back when it came out in 2012. I was kind of the perfect age. It was probably the first time where I was seeing a Spider-Man movie where I was the same age as the character. And I love Andrew Garfield in the role. I don't think his films were the best, even though I do have a soft spot for that first Amazing Spider-Man. But I feel like he might be my favourite Spider-Man. I feel like he was the best actor in the role. I'm a big fan of Andrew Garfield, and I think he did a really great job as Peter Parker, especially when we see him come back in No Way Home. I think he really kind of stands out amongst the three guys there at the end of the movie. But yeah, The Amazing Spider-Man, not the best film, but I did enjoy it. I liked how it felt kind of fresh and modern. They were trying to differentiate it from the Raimi films that were more kind of like glorified, kind of more comic booky, kind of 60s kind of New York, whereas The Amazing Spider-Man, you could tell they were trying to take more of a kind of modern, gritty, kind of contemporary approach. And although it's treading a lot of familiar ground with retelling that same familiar origin story, I appreciate the kind of the different take and trying to make it feel kind of more fresh and modern and grounded. And like I said, really like Andrew Garfield in the role of Peter Parker, as well as Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. Rhys Ifans was good as a Lizard too. So yeah, not the best film, but I still enjoyed it, and it was a solid entry. Coming in at number 6, I have Spider-Man No Way Home, obviously the capper to the Homecoming trilogy, and yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I probably don't love it as much now as I did when I first saw it. It's one of those kind of like big event crossover movies where the first time you watch it, you're really kind of like hyped and you're losing your mind, but I don't necessarily know if it holds up as well on repeat viewings as far as a kind of like standalone film in its own right. I do like the movie. I do think it's a really good film, but a big part of it is that kind of like crossover element of seeing all of the three Spider-Men come together at the end of the movie. And obviously that is a big part of the film. You can't like take that away from it, but I'm not sure if up until that point it is the strongest film. I do like the movie. I do think it's good, but I don't necessarily know if it holds up as well on repeat viewings after you've had that initial wow factor of seeing the Spider-Men come together. But like I said, that is a big part of the movie, and it was really fun to see them all cross over like that. Getting into the top 5 now, and at number 5 I have the first film in the Tom Holland trilogy, and that is of course Spider-Man Homecoming. And I do think this film is really good and really holds up. On reflection, I think it is the best film that Tom Holland Spider-Man has been in thus far. Hopefully Brand New Day will change that, because that does look like it could be a lot of fun and a really great movie. But Homecoming, I thought, was a real kind of breath of fresh air at the time. It really kind of took the character back to its roots of making Spider-Man feel like a kind of high schooler again. Because as much as I love the Raimi films, the first two in particular, Tobey Maguire was maybe too old for the role. You don't know if you could really buy him as a high schooler, and they kind of really got out of the high school element quite quickly. Whereas with the Tom Holland version, he was a lot more age appropriate for the role, and they took it back to high school. And one of the things I appreciate most about Homecoming is that it really is like a kind of great kind of high school teen comedy movie, but it just happens to be a Spider-Man movie at the same time. And yeah, I think it really holds up. Michael Keaton is great in the movie as the Vulture. As much fun as No Way Home was seeing all those Spider-Men come together, I think Homecoming probably is the strongest film in the trilogy. Coming in at number 4, I have the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man from 2002, and I still think this is one of the best Spider-Man movies we've had thus far. I remember at the time, actually, I wasn't the biggest fan. When I was a kid, I was like, they're a bit too, like, you know, corny and cheesy. But then when I grew up, like about 10 years or so later, I'm like, you know what, these are actually really good, really fun movies. I kind of missed the kind of the golden age of comic movies in a way where they did feel like just really kind of genuine and sincere, and they weren't afraid to be a little hokey and like embrace the comic booky roots of the character. And I think these first two Raimi films are really good, really solid films. I think the second one is a far superior film, but even that original is a really good, solid movie. It really kind of, along with the original first two X-Men movies, really kind of set the foundation and laid the groundwork for the golden age of comic book movies that followed, obviously with Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy coming very shortly in its wake. And yeah, I really like Tobey Maguire in the role. Obviously Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin is a lot of fun. And yeah, still I think a really good, fun, solid movie. Not, I think, one of the absolutely best, but still a really good time. Getting into the top 3 now, and this is where it gets really good. And at number 3, I have Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. And even though I really liked the first movie, I think the second one was a real big step up. Doc Ock in this movie. Alfred Molina, I feel like, is still one of the best villains we've had in any comic book movie. He really crushes it in that role. Really great kind of like tragic, kind of heroic villain of a character in Dr. Octavius. The action sequences are great. Obviously that train sequence is absolutely iconic. Still one of the best action set pieces of any comic book movie we've ever had. Really great, really thrilling sequence. Still holds up to this day. Obviously the Danny Elfman score is something I haven't really touched upon with these movies, but a really iconic musical theme for Spider-Man with that Danny Elfman score. And yeah, I kind of just really miss the days. I have really kind of like fond memories for the time in which comic book movies could also just be really great films in their own way. Obviously there are still really good ones that come out now, but back in the day, with like the Nolan Batman movies, with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, with the first two X-Men movies, I just miss when directors were able to make these films and make them actually really great films in their own way. They just happen to be superhero movies at the same time. And I think the first two Raimi films, the second one in particular, is still one of the best, even more than 20 years later. And I absolutely love Spider-Man 2. Getting into the top two now, and at number 2 I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I have to admit, when this first came out back in 2018, I had my doubts, I had my reservations. I'm like, is this movie going to be, for me, an animated take on the character? We have Miles Morales as well, so it wasn't necessarily Peter Parker, even though an older mentor kind of like Peter Parker is in the movie, in Peter B. Parker. But I was absolutely blown away. I still think it is one of the best Spider-Man movies, and prior to the sequel anyway, I feel like it was the best Spider-Man movie we've ever had. It really gets the character of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. It really understands who that character is. And I'm not actually like the biggest, craziest Spider-Man fan ever. I'm more of like a Daredevil fan, to be honest with you. But what I really appreciate about Into the Spider-Verse is that it really got and understood who the character of Spider-Man is. And I had a really great time in this movie. It was a really kind of fun, kind of multiverse kind of a movie, really the first one like it before that kind of trend blew up. Seeing all the different versions of the different Spider-Men from the different universes all come together was a lot of fun to see. And yeah, this is a film that didn't have the highest expectations going into, but just really blew me away when I saw it. And finally, coming in at number 1, I have the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, and that is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And yeah, as much as I love Into the Spider-Verse, I think its follow-up may have been even better. And one of the best things about these Spider-Verse movies is that they're really able to show what animation as a medium is capable of. They are truly remarkable on a visual level, these films. I'm really in awe of what they're able to accomplish with these movies, tackling all these different kind of forms of animation. We've got the classic 3D animation, we've got the 2D like hand-drawn animation, we've got all these different kind of styles and these kind of different kind of art forms all on showcase here, and they're truly extraordinary, kind of remarkable films on just purely visual level alone, as well as being really great narratively in terms of telling the story of Miles Morales, having all these different characters cross over together, like Spider-Gwen 2, love Haley Steinfeld in that role. And yeah, there's nothing else quite like these Spider-Verse movies. Obviously they are very different from the other films on this list. It's kind of hard to rank them against one another and compare and contrast them when the animated movies are so just kind of radically different from the live action films. But I still think they are, without question, the best Spider-Man films we've had thus far. Really understand the character, who the character of Spider-Man is at his core. Incredible on a visual level. I cannot wait to see the third film in the trilogy, Beyond the Spider-Verse. I know we've had a bit of a wait for that, keeps getting pushed back. I'm sure it'll be absolutely great when it does finally come out, if Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse are anything to go by. And who knows, if it is just as good, this is probably going to be one of the best trilogies we've ever had, with Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, and then finally Beyond the Spider-Verse whenever we do get that. But yeah, as much as I love Raimi's original 2 films, I think the Spider-Verse films have to come in at the top of my list. So yeah, that wraps up my kind of ranking of all 10 feature-length Spider-Man movies we've had thus far. Cannot wait to see Spider-Man Brand New Day. Looks like it could be a lot of fun. Looks like it's going to be more of a return to taking kind of Peter Parker back to his roots, stripping him back, making it kind of a true Peter Parker story, taking a lot of these other kind of MCU elements away. I mean, obviously we're going to have like Punisher and Hulk and other kind of Marvel characters in there, but it looks like it's going to be a lot more about Peter Parker and his story and making it more of just a kind of straightforward, definitive Spider-Man movie. Hopefully, anyway, that's the kind of vibe I get from the trailers. Looks like it could be a really great film if they knock it out of the park. So, yeah, that wraps up my ranking of all the Spider-Man movies we've had so far. How would you rank and compare and contrast all of the Spider-Man movies we've had in the last 25 years? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to catch up on my last ranking video, be sure to go ahead and click over here, or perhaps down here to catch up on another one of my recent videos. And as always, if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. But until then, I'll see you next time.